Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sara, and my co-presenters don't want to say their names. I'm here with Helen, and I'm here with Allie. Say hello to the people, everybody.
Hi, guys. Good to be back.
Allie, you're sounding more and more excited every time. I'm so proud.
After yesterday, definitely.
We're so excited. We've got a new Patreon up. Helen talking about Manchester City and the sulking that she went through yesterday. We're excited to share that with you. We'll post that on our socials soon. We're really excited to get in this episode, and we're really just going to launch in. We're going to cover a lot in the WSL. We're going to talk West Ham and Manchester City. We're going to talk Reading and Spurs, and then we're going to get into the NWSL and everything that is going on there, because we've got a lot to say, and anything we don't cover there will be a Patreon going up. So without further ado, let's dive in. West Ham versus Manchester City. I need to just note that this is not a Manchester City podcast. This is not a West Ham podcast.
What? No, sorry. I signed up to a Man City podcast.
I just want to say for all of you who are listening, are like, you talked about City and West Ham last episode. We did, but this was an amazing game that West Ham won 2-0, and it's important that we talk about it for many reasons on the West Ham side and on the City side. So this game was an absolute blast from a fan's perspective. I know maybe from Helen's perspective, not as much, but I had a great time watching it. Manchester City had 73% of the possession. They had 13 corners compared to West Ham's 1 corner, and they had 20 shots compared to West Ham's 9. However, in comparison, 7 shots on goal to City, 5 to West Ham. So it's fairly good percentage of shots on goal to shots as a whole for West Ham. This is all to say City absolutely dominated this game, and yet West Ham comes away with the win. Allie was there. She's buzzing. I'm texting her, and all she could really say was like, I'm so excited. We're so tense. And then just like went dark for a while.
Pretty much.
Overall, let's start off with West Ham. What has changed for West Ham since last season?
Honestly, we have got a new general manager who is not taking any nonsense, and we got rid of our divas. We got rid of our troublemakers that were causing a terrible dynamic amongst the team.
Name them.
There's a very obvious one. It's Lehman. Alicia Lehman was the one that was causing so much drama, so much problem. You could see it when we played Villa. You can see it when she came back. And we got rid of that. And we got rid of players that didn't want to play for West Ham, and now we've got a squad that do, and we are just getting better and better, and I'm so excited.
I mean, culture can do a lot, and we're going to talk about culture when we come on to City also. It can do a lot in the positive, it can do a lot in the negative. Is there anything tactically that you think that they're doing on the field this season that they're doing different from last season? Or is it really just, no, these are players who've played together now for a while, we got rid of the negativity, and so they're thriving?
I think it is a mixture of both. We've started to play a high press football, which we were not doing before. We were very much play it out from the back and hope for the best for our first 2 seasons, and Ollie has come in, our manager, and gone, no, that's not the kind of football I like. So we are playing more pressing football. We're a bit more of a physical team that we weren't before, and that is helping. We're muscling people off the ball, which we weren't doing before, and like you said, team dynamic.
It plays into the hands of people like Gilly Flaherty. Like, this is not something that West Ham have done before, but they have a really physical team that just weren't very physical. Isn't that mad?
Well, it's interesting too, because I think some people could look at this game and say, well, City were obviously the better team because they had more possession, they had more shots, they dominated. So what would you say in defense of that? West Ham played defense the majority of the game. In the second half, they really were parking the bus, if you will. What do you say to people who use that as a negative against West Ham and say, well, they can only go so far playing this type of football?
A win doesn't have to be pretty. It has to be a win. And honestly, yeah, we were defensive, but you talk about shots on goal. How many saves did Mac Arnold make? That was the biggest thing for us. It wasn't that you guys missed or you had bad opportunities. There was a few where they thought they were playing rugby and it went over the bar. But God bless Ellen White. But I would say most of those Mac saved. She punched out. She got clear very quickly. And that's the difference as well. So you talk about shots on goal, but Mac saved, I would say, 90% of them.
I did notice that, Allie. It was actually really interesting from the stand. every corner, even if it was one where it was going straight to the keeper, she punched it out. And actually, at first I was like, catch it, grab it. But I thought, you know what? It's actually a bit of a stroke of genius because number one, it can actually lead to a counter-attack. And it did on a couple of occasions. And number two, why put yourself in that dangerous situation? You've got giants in the box. Like, you've got players like Janine Becky, Ellen White, Bunny comes on, and Jill Scott, of course. You just don't want to risk it.
It's a very interesting style of play that West Ham has kind of come on to, because you think about counterattacking teams and you think of them as teams that sit back defensively and kind of let the game happen and then take their moments while they can. West Ham's not doing that. They're playing a counterattacking style combined with a high press style, which I think is why it's so fun to watch, because yes, while they aren't controlling the game, dictating the game, they're still high pressing and they know what they're doing, and that's their game plan.
Yeah, and as we saw for our second goal, we managed to capitalise on mistakes, because I don't know what Demi was thinking by that back pass, but it was so short, and Yui was like, yeah, all right, I'll have a bit of that, and just the most beautiful chip.
I have to use this as a transition because I was holding my head when that happened. We've talked about Demi Stokes. We don't have to do another moment on Demi Stokes because we did on the previous episode. But with that being said, I'm going to do a moment on this back pass because, listen, I think I texted this to both of you. I coach young kids playing soccer. And if I had a young kid who used the outside of their dominant foot in that position instead of just using their weak foot and playing a normal instep pass back to their keeper, I would pull them out of the game at that moment. And the fact that there's a professional player doing that was just, it made me want to like rip my skin off, to be totally honest. But using that as a little transition, talking about West Ham and how they've been so cohesive. They were fun to watch. They had clearly had energy. It wasn't the type of game where at the end you were like, oh, can they hold on? Can they hold on? It was like, no, they're settled. They actually know what they're doing. And then you flip it to the other side. And Helen, is there anything that came from this game for City that we haven't talked about, that we didn't touch on last week? Is there any clarity that we didn't get from this, or is it really just a further solidification of the fact that Gareth Taylor is the problem?
I listened back to the episode the other day and it's funny because it's really foreboding, and then we go into this game and then it's like, oh, it's just the same things happened again, really. But you talk about frustration. I go to a lot of women's football games. where I'm sat in the stands. That is the first time in my entire time. It doesn't matter who I'm supporting or it doesn't matter who's on the pitch where I've been really vocal. Like, what are you doing? And actually, I really don't think that players are stupid. So Janine Becky was put kind of as a right back or a right wing back, completely out of position. It's, we're not going to go over injuries again.
Please don't. Don't take that from me.
No, but she was playing at right wing back and she was probably 10 metres away from me, so like on the second row. At one point, 3 or 4 minutes to go, and it's 1-0 to West Ham. And there's 2 players in front of her. And what you want to happen is you want her to go to the player furthest away and go towards them, and then somebody to run over and cover the player that she's leaving behind. But she kind of goes, no, I can't go towards them because what about this player? And I don't know what to do. Oh my God. And then that player, the West Ham player, was able to get the ball, turn around, text their mate, go on, maybe go on a bit of a shopping spree, pour themselves a cocktail and then pass the ball. I've heard rumours of things like Jill Scott making a joke that when she got the assist against Leicester in the FA Cup midweek, she was scared that she was going to get told off because it wasn't in the Gareth Taylor way that she did it, because she streamed forwards out of position. And the players seem stifled.
Yeah, there's an energy you can feel when you're there. So I'm very curious, like how you're touching on, Helen, how you both felt. You were both there. How you both felt the energies were for both those teams. You're saying it now, Helen. They're scared. They're stifled. It's like somebody took these amazing creative players and, essentially put boundaries around them.
Yeah, and I don't know how you felt, Allie, but I felt like if you couldn't have two more opposing teams. You've got West Ham, where really they've got the freedom to do anything, because if they'd lost 5-0, you would have moved on, you would have brushed yourself off and moved on. And when you're 1-0 up after 40 minutes, you're thinking, this is fun now. Like, we can do anything really, and we've had quite a good game here. Man City let's forget injuries. We're terrified. Minute 1 to minute 90, terrified. And you just think, Gareth, you are supposed to be a coach of a top 3 team. And you know you are basically, excuse my French, fucked. Because you have got Demi Stokes, who, let's face it, shouldn't be in a top 3 team. And you've got Alex Greenwood, who's a fullback. Other than that, you have no other defenders. Think of something. Work around what you have. Don't put Jill Scott as a centre-back and then Janine Becky as a right-back and then Alex Greenwood as a centre-back. If you look at that lineup, the only person in their actual position, ironically, is Demi Stokes. Everyone else is not even close to position, completely out of position. And it's lazy. It's uncreative. It shows him for what he is, which is he's a complete fraud. He shouldn't be in a top 3 team because he's not able to work with what he's got in front of him. Then cemented by the fact that after 40 minutes, you're losing 1-0. So what do you do? What do you do in the 55th minute? You take off England's best striker, who was the best chance of getting a goal. You take her off and you replace her with a like-for-like striker in Bunny. You take off one and you put on another in the same position. Do you want to change the game? Do you want to change the game? Yes or no?
I feel like I have to answer. Yes, I want to change the game. I promise. I want to change the game.
And also, no offence to my darling team, you're playing West Ham. You're playing a team that you have scored 23 goals against to our 2 before Sunday. And Ellen White has scored in every single game against us, apart from, technically she scored yesterday, but that was offside. But she has scored in every single game. What is missing there? We're beating you 1-0. Surely you think, right, 2 up front. I'm going to keep Ellen with Bunny and then pincer them in because they can't contain both of them.
You needed to change the game and he hasn't got the ability to change the game. And fact of the day, if this was men's football, he would have been fired after Real Madrid. He wouldn't be in a job anymore, but it's not. It's women's football. And so the club will stick by him. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Man City finish 6th this season and then blame it on the injuries.
Well, to be honest, if this was men's football, he wouldn't have been hired. Let's just start there.
Fact.
Nope.
Fact.
Because he would not have been qualified to coach a first division team.
Fact. He's not qualified.
I mean, you heard it here first because nobody else is saying it, right? We're calling for Gareth Taylor's job. If you want to hear Helen talking into a microphone about Manchester City, and you can do what Helen does when you listen to podcasts, just she likes to pause it and talk to the podcast host as if she's there. You can do that with Helen's Patreon, which is over there at www.patreon.com/WOSO. We are not done with WSL. We're going to talk Reading and Spurs, actually. But first, we're going to go around the world, around the world.
Yes, Sarah. That was so good. I didn't want to join in because I didn't want to ruin it.
I've been taking singing lessons this entire offseason. That's my surprise to you.
Wow, I am surprised. So thank you.
There are no huge changes here in the Spanish league. Barcelona are still dominating with a 9-1 win over Alaves. However, we do have a surprising start by Sociedad, who sits tied with Barcelona in first place with 5 wins and no losses. The battle for Madrid ended in a tie. Madrid CFC tied Atletico Madrid 2-2.
Wicked. And let's go over to France. We are keeping our eye on Paris FC and Bordeaux. Can they challenge one of those Champions League spots? So nice to see other teams in France doing it. As we know, Lyon and PSG sit top of the table and they won't be playing each other until November. Of course, that will be our game of the week when it does come along. Lots of drama will unfold before then, so we will keep you in the loop. But so far, 4 teams unbeaten.
In the Champions League, by the time you hear this, Barca will have played Arsenal in their fixture and Chelsea will have played Wolfsburg. These are the 2 games we are keeping our eyes on. Sadly, this happens on Tuesday in between us recording and you listening to the episode. But oh boy, are we excited, and we'll be posting all over our socials as they happen.
Can we not just pretend that we're recording this live or something?
Barcelona played some really amazing Barcelona-style soccer. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Finally, we are going over to Mexico. This is one of our favorite leagues to cover. It was a wild finish last year, so obviously we're covering it again here. Unal sits in first place with 11 wins and no losses, completely undefeated. As you'll notice, this league is a little further on. We've got the same spread out that we saw last year. We've got Unal in first and a lot of teams vying for the second, third, fourth spots. So more to come in Mexico, and we'll be keeping our eyes on that league.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football games, including women's football. Want to know why Miedemar scores so many goals? Do you want to explore how City have turned it around this season? Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and sign up to learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for €10. That's €40 off the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Staying over here in the FAWSL, we're going to talk Reading and Spurs because these two teams are very interesting. They finished in very similar places last season in 7th and 8th, Reading in 7th, Tottenham in 8th, but they've had polar opposite starts to this season. Obviously, Tottenham is sitting in second above Chelsea, and Reading have started wild, and Reading have started 0-4 and are completely in last place, and Reading fans are now starting to worry about relegation, which frankly last year it seemed like they were a middle of the table team that was moving up instead of moving down. So we wanted to dive into both of these teams together and separately and dig into what is happening and why they've kind of split. So I'll toss it over to you, Helen. What for Reading? I mean, you and I talked so much last year about what a great team Reading was and how they've been developing and they're up and coming, and we expected them to kind of be where Tottenham is right now. What's changed?
Yeah, it's been a tough one, and I covered the Reading Man United opener, and it was much of the same, to be honest, as what they've experienced against Spurs. Reading had a window which they couldn't do anything about. Farrah Williams wanted to retire. Farrah Williams was key for Reading. But Anghara James, of course, went over to the NWSL. And I don't think people realise how key she was for Reading as well. And then the biggest one for me is Danielle Carter. And I think it's a little bit of a mixture between what she has to offer in terms of experience and in terms of her willingness to be involved in a team. And I'm sorry, but you're seeing it at the Brighton end, aren't you? Because Brighton have had a really brilliant start to the season.
I'm going to throw in Jess Fishlock, too, if we're listing names, because she wasn't there for the whole season, but oh my gosh, what an influence she had.
Yeah, you're spot on there, because the names that we've just mentioned there are kind of all women's football household names. Like, you could talk to my dad and he'd probably know those players because they're kind of staples in women's football. And I think what they lost in culture, you talked about culture with West Ham, I think is kind of probably the biggest factor for Reading. But they're also really dwindling in numbers. I mean, they have 4 registered out-and-out midfielders in their squad on their website. And then I just don't know where their goals are going to come from. Natasha Dowie has and does prove it all over the world, but she's injury-prone, and she's their only real out-and-out goal scorer. Like, when you look at the teams which I thought they'd be around this season, the likes of Manchester United, you know, they've got Leah Galton, they've got Ella Toon, they've even got Ona Bartley, who I know is obviously a fullback, but she can pop in goals. I just don't know where Reading's goals come from now, because when you've got Farah out with the mix, who's a really creative player, when you've got Danielle Carter going to Brighton, and you've just got Natasha Dowie, and you're super reliant on it, it's quite worrying. Tash Harding, of course, is still there, captain, 32 years old though, but really super experienced. In short, I think it's an aging squad, and I do worry about them this season. But, and I want to flip it around, they joined the men this year at the men's facilities at Bearwood Park. They've got access to those men's facilities. I think if they can cling on this season, then really they can have, you know, a really good rebuilding process over the summer and kind of give Reading a new face. You know, it's going to be a new Reading feel from next season, but I just think they've really just got to get through this season, have one season bedding in to top facilities with top coaches and, you know, and top backroom staff and physios and all that stuff. And I really think next season they can go for it again and go for those coveted top 3 positions.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point about where their goals are coming from. And weirdly, it's a strange dichotomy, I think, in Reading of like an aging locker room and roster, but having also lost a lot of their leadership. Like you talk about Farrah Williams leaving. I frankly think Jess Fishlock is a wonderful on-field leader wherever she goes. You know, she's a cornerstone of OL Reign over here in the NWSL right now. And I think it's a weird dichotomy of aging and no leadership on the field.
I agree. It's a tough one. I think that they're in the mix with Birmingham after that performance, because what you've got to remember, we'll talk about Spurs and we'll go on to Allie, you know, who'll cover Spurs, but Spurs also got battered in the derby. You know, you were talking non-WSL related, but this is a Spurs team who've had a decent run at the start of this season, but they've yet to meet their match. And when they did, outside of the WSL, it wasn't comfortable to watch. So I don't think this is a Spurs team which are, you know, going to be in that top 3 position for the rest of the season. And Reading, it was bad. Sorry to the Reading fans out there. It was really uncomfortable.
Very quickly, do you think Kelly should go? Kelly Chambers, do you think?
No, I think she is Reading. Like, she's as Reading as Shearer is Newcastle. She's, you know, part of the woodwork. I don't think that it's the right thing, and it's not a women's football move to be like, the problem's the coach. I don't think it's the coaching. I think they've got a really unlucky start in terms of their goal scorer, injuries, that sort of thing. And then I think on top of it, they've lost a lot of players in the summer, and it's going to be a really big rebuilding process.
I don't think that we'll see Reading go down. I think they've had a hard start to the season, and they will end up in, you know, the bottom part of the standings, but we won't see them relegated. They are having trouble with their goal scoring, but we look at Tottenham, and I mean, Tottenham beat Reading only 1-0. They're not a team that's scoring a ton of goals either. They don't have a ton of big name forwards. One person like a Vivian Miedema of Tottenham, who that's where 70% of your goals are coming from. But Allie, why is Tottenham sitting in number 2?
Because I think they've done something that normally ends in disaster, which is they got rid of half their squad at the end of last season. They got rid of 11 players last season, including Gemma Davidson and other like key player Kennedy and stuff that for them. And their new manager, Rhiannon Skinner, has managed to bring in players that play her style of football. It was sort of, they hung on until the end of the season with the players they had, and it's been a brand new rebuild. And, you know, they've kept key players like Ashley Neville. I think every team wants Ashley Neville in their squad because as a back player, she is one of the best in the league. How she's not got an England call-up, I do not know. And they've managed to keep together. They've brought in some youngsters that they can mould. And yeah, they've had a bit of an easy start. Would we have pegged them to beat the team in blue, Man City? No. And yeah, it was a controversial win, but a win is a win. And they have, you know, started off with 4 wins out of 4, which nobody would have pegged Tottenham as having that.
Absolutely not. You know, we've said multiple times, if you did, please write into us because we want to have you on.
Yeah, we saw obviously the last game out, they beat Birmingham 1-0. So I think that kind of adds to, I think they would be really disappointed with that game. I think that just kind of adds to, you know, this WSL league, it's not going to be predictable. We're not going to see what we've seen in the past where it's like, if you're slaughtering a team one week, you'll slaughter them every week, you know? This is a Spurs team which I think have gone back to the training ground and gone, next week against Reading, we need to bring it. These are our closest rivals. These and Everton. And they brought it. They brought it, man.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, this is amazing. When we're looking at this table, this is exactly what we've wanted to see. It's boring when we know who's in first, who's in second, who's in third, and we're only having fights within the middle of the table teams, within the bottom of the table teams. This is exactly what we've been talking about of we need to close the gap. We need to close it in international soccer from bottom to top, and we need to close it within leagues from bottom to top. Partially, that's why I really enjoy following the NWSL, because on any given day, anybody can beat anybody, and that is now what the WSL is starting to become. We're seeing it a little bit this season.
Did you just do a transition there?
I did.
Sarah, honestly, day by day, you are just getting better and better and better.
Now that we've ruined the transition, I'm going to awkwardly go into the NWSL. So from what was going to be a very smooth transition into a bumpy transition to talk about the NWSL, we're going from talking about all of this really fun tables, teams, what's happening, into a much heavier subject. And I think I just want to first say, for everybody out there listening, I want to say trigger warning, because we're about to talk about NWSL and all of the sexual misconduct and sexual coercion charges that are being brought to light. So trigger warning for all that are listening, if you would like to pause and end the episode now, because this is the last subject we'll be talking about. But for those of you, I hope you do listen, because this is a very, very interesting subject and something that frankly needs to be spoken about. So to give a brief overview, there has been some heavy news, very sadly, stories that we're sure are pretty pervasive across all industries. To go through a short timeline of what's happened in the NWSL, on Thursday of last week, Meg Linehan and Katie Strang for The Athletic dropped an article in which former NWSL players accused Paul Riley, who is the current North Carolina Courage coach. He's been the North Carolina Courage coach for a very long time. He is a prominent coach in the league. He's coached the Portland Thorns, and he's been a coach around not only the NWSL, but the previous women's leagues that existed here in the U.S. So he has been around this game here in this country for a very long time. So The Athletic dropped this article in which former NWSL players accused Paul Riley of sexual coercion. This comes on the heels of many, many investigations that have been brought to light over the past year, 2 years, but specifically what happened a couple months ago in Richie Burke of the Washington Spirit being accused of a lot of verbal abuse, him being banned from the league, and now ownership is being called by many, many fans to sell the team because they clearly turned a blind eye, tried to sweep it under the rug, and didn't care enough to change it. So sadly, this is not the first, but we hope that this is maybe the last time. This got brought to light by The Athletic, and promptly North Carolina Courage fired Paul Riley. Paul Riley denies all of these allegations, but I want to first and foremost say we believe the players.
100%.
The NWSL commissioner, Lisa Baird, released a statement then later in the day, which frankly for me was far too late in the day. She said, quote, "I was shocked and disgusted to read the new allegations reported in The Athletic this morning. The league, in concert with North Carolina Courage, has reacted swiftly in response to these new allegations, and former head coach Paul Riley has been terminated," end quote. She did go on to say that the league was reporting these quote unquote new allegations, and that the league was quote implementing a new anonymous reporting process, and she urged players to raise concerns to the league. So then this is where it gets, this is where you just kind of have to say it got spicy, because Alex motherfucking Morgan comes to Twitter with some receipts. And after this statement from the NWSL, from Lisa Baird, Alex Morgan tweets screenshots of emails from these players to Lisa Baird, and Lisa Baird's reply saying, quote, "We have reviewed our files and I can confirm that the initial complaint was investigated to conclusion," which is obviously in complete opposition to what she said in her public statement, which we now know was a complete lie. After that happened, all of the games were suspended for the weekend. We wake up the next day on Friday, and Lisa Baird and General Counsel Lisa Evans were ousted by the board of the NWSL. And it's just been ongoing from there. There's a lot of people looking into this. The NWSL Players Association, go follow them on Twitter, NWSLPA. They're doing an amazing job of keeping everybody updated on what they're doing and doing everything they can to keep their own players safe. Essentially what they're saying is, we're taking our power back. Enough is enough. I just want to say that this is obviously a huge issue, and this idea of the NWSL players taking their power back, it's been a huge theme throughout the entire year. I go to hashtag #EndSideHustles. The NWSL players have been fighting to gain power back from the league, in which they clearly feel like they are not being respected or treated well in many, many capacities. So this has been a lot. Allie, I'm curious, what you thought as all of this came out, as somebody who follows the WSL closer, what your perspective is of the NWSL right now.
I mean, it's a mess. It's always been, like, as an outsider, just from, like, the fundamentals with the whole draft thing and the fact that no players are their own player, it's down to the clubs. But then to see this whole sexual abuse and assault coming out, we're seeing things where apparently Riley turned around to one of his gay players saying you're too pretty to be a lesbian, and just the verbal abuse as well as the coercion. And you wonder how long it's been going on for, and cannot be just the North Carolina Courage. It cannot just be Paul Riley and all of that. And then you look at Lisa, and she's been in charge of many organisations for many years that have had these sort of scandals, and she seems to be the queen of keeping things under the rug, like just sweeping them, getting rid of them and stuff like that. And if we're looking at the normal league, I don't know if you saw, but Nadia Nadim posted her story saying that when she was at Sky Blue, they lied about her contract so they could get more money off of Portland when she wanted to transfer. She was only on a 1-year contract with the option to extend, and they said, don't worry about it, we won't do it, it's just to get you in the country into the league. And then when she wanted to trade to Portland, they were like, oh, well, we've got 2 years on her. You've got to pay us more money in the draft and the pick because we've got the option, and almost cost her move to Portland, which would have been an absolute catastrophe. And it's just that lack of autonomy that players seem to have.
I think you touch on a perfect point here, which is, yes, we're here to talk about this specifically, and the fact that players are being mistreated just across the board. This specifically, what we're talking about of sexual coercion and all of that is absolutely terrible. And it leads to, if there can be, sadly, an even larger picture of these players are not treated with respect by the league in any way, shape, or form, but whether it be, as you mentioned, how they don't own rights essentially to themselves. People ask why Tobin Heath is over at Arsenal. Well, it might be because she doesn't want to play in Louisville because she didn't have a say in that. And that's no disrespect to Louisville at all. That's just simply a person wanting to control where they live their lives. So it's everything from that to pay to these stories that are now coming to light, like you mentioned, and just complete lack of respect from the league. I think you touched on it perfectly. This is systemic. This is quite literally an institutional failure by the NWSL, and as the players are calling for, there needs to be a massive overhaul. It needs to be essentially, and it hurts my heart to say this as an NWSL fan, as a fan of women's soccer in this country specifically, it needs to be torn down and rebuilt. And I think that a lot of players and a lot of fans are feeling that heartbreak as well about this because, you know, this is the third iteration of a independent women's soccer league here in this country, and everybody is rooting for it to work. And sadly, right now, it's very, very much not working. It's not working, and it's sad that it's not working. It's mainly sad that all of these players are, you know, their lives, their emotional well-being, they're being taken a toll on because of all of this. I'm going to call out, because I know all of the big media are listening right now. I will say I want to call out the big media outlets, because you see players talking of exactly what I just mentioned, of wanting the league to succeed. And because of that, not wanting to bring negative press to the sport. And quite frankly, their fears were justified. Obviously, they should come forward, and I'm not saying that that's a reason that they shouldn't. I'm saying that their fear was absolutely justified, because what they feared is exactly what's happening, of these mainstream media outlets never, ever talking about the NWSL until something like this hits, and now it's everywhere in this country. And now all of a sudden everybody knows what's happening in the NWSL, and it's only when it's the negative. And these players had fear that as the sport was gaining traction, it would be bad for everyone and for the growth of the sport. And the fact that that was the fear, it's absolutely heartbreaking. It just, again, points to the fact that this is entirely systemic.
Yeah, and the review needs to be independent. Like, I don't agree with who they've appointed. I think they're too in it, and it's not going to be a proper review. It's going to be, how can we save this league and what is going to look the best? So, like, we've already got rid of a couple of the managers that have been accused of this. That should be enough, and I don't believe it is. And you've got these grown folk who have got the lives and livelihoods of these young college kids that are coming out, and having that much power is painful to see. And that's how we get into a situation like this. There needs to be a bigger overhaul that I don't think the league could survive. So it would be a case of burning it to the ground and bringing it back in. But first off, it needs to be an independent inquiry, because the people they've got to do it right now are just not going to be independent enough.
Your point about the head coaches being fired, that's obviously not enough. It's not even enough for owners to sell to a different ownership group. Something much more institutional needs to change. And as fans and probably too as players, that can be a little scary, because that could mean tearing it all down. But if that needs to happen, then that does. I think that a lot of fans like myself are feeling conflicted over, do we support the NWSL for the rest of this season? It kind of feels like where do we go from here? And I think everybody's asking that question. And the only answer that we all know is that institutional changes need to be made. And for the short term, I think that it's supporting the players and following their lead with everything that they're bringing to light.
Yeah, you've said it there. You support the players, not the institution. So if the players come out and go, do you know what? I know this is our livelihood, but we end it now, then we support that, even as disappointing as that might be, because you want your team to get the championship or playoffs like that. If the players decide they want to carry on, then you support that, because it is the players' decision. We ignore the institution and we follow the lead of the players. I think they are smart enough and know what's best. Like I said, we've seen it with Morgan, we've seen it with Klingenberg at Portland, we've seen it with Sauerburn at Portland. Like, they are fighting for what they can, but it might be a case of good night.
Absolutely. And that's heartbreaking too, because you then look at these players who are already underpaid and already can barely, if they even can, make a living off of what they make from their NWSL season. And so to say we want to cancel the rest of the season is to say I want to forgo parts of my salary that I am relying on. So it's all encompassing here. This lack of respect for players and them not being paid enough, it leads to a more difficult decision for them. If they were being paid, NBA money or even maybe WSL money.
Ours isn't that great either.
But if they were being paid a livable wage, let's put it at that, what they deserve, hopefully, maybe this would be an easier decision. But with that being said, we will continue to follow what's going on in the NWSL. Games are returning on Wednesday, and I hope to be at the Gotham game and report to everybody kind of what is going on there. Again, as we said, Allie, we just hope to follow the lead of players and support them, and that's what we plan on doing. We hope to put out a larger Patreon where we can dive deeper into this subject and the really nitty-gritty details of it, which will be coming on Friday. To end on a more positive note, I think that in terms of the NWSL, I'm so happy and proud of these players for coming forward. I'm so happy that all of this is finally coming to light. It breaks my heart, obviously, that it has happened, but I'm glad that we're finally seeing the truth, and more truth is going to continue to be uncovered, I'm sure, in whatever period, the next period of time, month, 2 months, whatever it is. So with all of it being negative, I think to look at the positive, I'm glad that this is now something that we hopefully are going to fix.
Yeah, and that players feel that they no longer have to stay in silence in order to carry on their career.
Absolutely. In many, many ways. And hopefully this leads to more power for the players and more control for the players overall. I'm going to say not just in the NWSL, but for women's sports in general, for the WNBA here, for female athletes all around the world. Hopefully that's what it leads to.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I've been Sara.
I've been Allie.
And Helen just popped off real quick, so we're going to say bye for her.
She's sulking. She's still sulking.
She had some tears in her eyes the whole time talking about Man City. I'm so sorry if you could hear it. She's off sulking right now. That's it for us here at the WOSO Show. Thanks, everybody.